Hello and welcome to Real Voices of Happy Valley. In this episode, Dave and I talked to Pete Lassey, one of the members of the White Ribbon campaign, which is...
White Ribbon is a campaign against violence to girls and women, recognised by the United Nations, and started in Mytham Road by Chris Green, now an OBE. We've supported it pretty much all along between us, haven't we?
We have, yeah, and it's directed at men and boys to make them look at their behaviour and the behaviour of their friends and at what they put up with and don't.
Yes, and it's very much up to blokes to put a stop to it. It's not, as Pete says later, it's not a women's issue. Yeah, being beaten is a women's issue. Not beating people up is a men's issue.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, and I worked for White Ribbon for a short while and produced a guide on how to cut down such things at festivals, which has been taken on by many festivals.
Good. Yeah.
Music festivals, that is.
And you know Pete because you play football with him.
And he's quite a decent sort of right back.
That's good.
Right, but perhaps we should just have to listen to what he has to say.
We're sitting here in our front room on a rainy day talking to Pete Lassey from the White Ribbon campaign. And he'll tell us more, but it's an organisation which tries to combat violence against women by involving men talking to their friends and trying to discourage other men from doing it in a way that maybe women can't. So, hi Pete, and welcome.
Hiya.
Is that a fair description of what White Ribbon is?
I think it is a fair description. I think what I'd add is that we often talk about, everyone knows it as violence against women, and violence against women and girls. And the problem is, they take out the key part of it, which it's men's violence. If they don't do it to themselves, women. It's men that do it, so it's about men's violence against women and girls.
Yeah.
And I think the way that the sort of perpetrator, the people that are doing it are taken out of the discussion, and it's focused on women, and therefore it's a woman's issue. It's not a man's issue. This is for women to talk about and think about, not men. But actually, it's about getting men to identify that this is a cause that every decent bloke should be engaged with. But it is about getting men to change their or having discussions with other men to get them to look at changing their behaviour and the ways they are with other men as well as with women. But it's also, if we just waited until every man had talked to every other man and the world's changed, it's never going to happen, is it? So we've got to recognise that there are structural issues, and White Ribbon is about looking at how institutions, governments engage with perpetrating this, or not perpetuating, but maintaining this, all these mechanisms which stop equality, and so I think part of what we want to do is say actually, well, men should be not shying away from this. They should be providing some leadership in this, not leadership, but. And the problem with saying stuff like that is that then it's like, well, we don't want to be thinking, well, actually, men want to take this away from women, and they want to be, the white knights that come in and save women. Although there are men that are like that, don't get me wrong. I mean,
there's nothing greatly wrong with.
But it's and I think that's one of the reasons why I really struggle with this idea of allies or allyship, because I think men should be doing this for men, not just for. It's not we're here to help. You poor women who can't really speak for yourself. We're going to come and support you. It's not about that. It's about saying, well, actually, this whole inequality is damaging to men as it is to women. Of course, in a patriarchal society, men have got all sorts of advantages in that process. But one of the things that lots of men don't really understand growing up as young boys and being sort of educated into this sort of masculine, these concepts of masculinity which encourage them to be violent, objectify women, and enter into relationships where the sole focus is about having sexual encounters or sexual conquests. They never really it takes them a long time before they for a lot of boys to see women as other human beings who and so they're never really having relationships. They're never on a level where they see the other person as a human being. It's an object, and it's like, well, you're missing so much out of your life because you'll work this out, but the sooner you work it out, the better your life's going to be than spending your youth and being a young man and not really understanding actually the real joy of a proper relationship.
And I mean, I've never been a boy or a man, but I imagine there's peer pressure among other boys and men, egging them on, or at the very least staying quiet if they're being disrespectful to girls or women.
There is, and I think, and it's about. I think it's so. Some of that's about confidence, and when you're young, that's much more difficult to do, to be able to stand up and say things, and often it's it's about the sort of peer. You're right. It's like peer pressure. It's about groups of lads reinforcing the fact that they're a group of lads doing the sort of laddie things, and that sort of it's sort of spirals, and it's quite difficult to jump off that and say, well, actually, there's a problem there.
Yeah, but that's part of what White Ribbon is about, is it?
Absolutely.
So it's about saying to men, yes, there is a problem, but rather than sitting around saying, oh, he did a terrible thing, the question is, what are you going to do about it?
Absolutely, and that's why I got involved with White Ribbon, was when I was talking to Chris Green, who founded White Ribbon, and he was saying, I'm on Man of the Year on something. Oh, what are you on, Man of the Year about anything? And he says, I'm on Cosmopolitan Man of the Year. And I thought it's balmy. And then he told me about White Ribbon, and I said, that's good. And then he said, I says, I think that's a really important thing. He said, well, what you got to do? I says, what do you mean what you got to do? He said, well, what you got to do? Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, we'll at least join the board. So and I think it's really easy. It's too easy, I think, for men to go, well, that's a really good idea. I think I agree with you. And thank you very much. And walk off. Or that's really good. I'll sign a petition. And that's it. Or that's very good. I'll even wear a white ribbon. And one of the things I've always tried to talk about on the border White Ribbon is that we're here to get men to do something. If all it's doing is tokenism, if all it is men saying to other men, "I great because I support women," forget it. It's not about that. We've got to get people being active in trying to make a change, and entering in those discussions with other men, when they see it. And actually, I've had some fantastic discussions with, people I've never met before, but just men that were talking to. I remember I was on a works thing or in Cannes, and it was a work had sent me, and it really had nothing to do with me. So like a freebie of a week having fun at this event, which is all about. It was all about property development and things like that. And I'd gone because someone else had dropped out. So I just thought this is a ball. But I'm going to all these parties and bumping into all these blokes. And I was talking to this guy from America, really nice guy. We're having a really good time, and we're at a bar, and it was very, it was. Lots of people with money, and I'm talking to this guy, and it just seemed like sometimes you meet someone and they're really nice, and you just get on with them just like that. And then he said something derogatory about women when they were in a bar. They're a group of blokes, and so I got talking to him, and it was just so normal that he never even thought about it. When I started discussing it with him, it was like you could see it was clicking in his brain, but it just becomes so normalised, and you need someone to say, hang on a minute, but you've got to get to the point where you're talking to him about it, not as, I often see people, well, what about your wife or your daughter or your mother? And it's like, forget about that. It's about what is it right or not. It doesn't have to be. A lot of people are involved with right rebellion because they've seen the dads being violent to the mother, or they've had personal experience of violence, and I understand that, but we can't rely on the fact that people are having to go through these experiences to be involved. It has to be men standing up who've not been necessarily been exposed to that. It's not, you can't wait for people to have the significant others raped before they think, well, actually this is an important thing to be involved in.
When I was teaching in higher education, so average, normally 19 to 21 or so, I was doing event management. I used to talk about issues of potential sexual and physical violence at festivals. And they would say, well, nobody fights at that. And so, yes, but all kinds of sexual things go on. And I had this thing, I said, just for the boys now, put your hand up if you are the sort of person who would sexually abuse anyone. No hands. Put your hands up if you know someone who has or who might. And a few hands would tentatively go up. And the next question was, next time you're out with these people, what are you going to do to make sure they don't? Rather than wait, as you were saying, rather than say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah. It's about spotting your mate, looking at a woman who's dancing on the tables and has either drank or ingested too much of something or other, and really could do with somebody's making sure she gets back to her tent safely. Yeah. And but your mate's looking at her with the wrong intent in his eyes. You suspect. What are you going to do at that point? On what sort of and also it's like some of you are going to be event organisers. What are you going to do to ensure your events are safe as well? Yeah. Rather than sort of decry things that have happened afterwards.
And I think it's interesting because talking to women about this issue. I think one of the problems is for women, they know all about this issue because they've lived it since they were a young girl. They've had the attention, they've had the abuse, so it's completely it's completely part of the experience. Protecting themselves when they go out, thinking about preparing how they're going to get from one place to another. Trying to keep themselves safe all the time. Blokes don't do that. But not only do they do that, but a lot of the abuse that women get, a lot of men don't even see it, because people that are abusing women want it to be secret. And I remember when I was like you, when I was working in higher education, and I had a personal tutoring session, and the student came to see me, and she'd just come from playing sports, and she were in a sort of a netball gear, and I was saying, oh, you do sports, and she says, oh yeah, I said, do netball. I said, and I was saying, oh, what else do you do? And she was saying, oh, well, I like to do running, but it's problematic. I said, what do you mean problematic? She said, well, where I can run. And so I was, this is in Bradford, and my office overlooked the main road next to campus. And she says, well, I can't run down there, because if I run down there, I get people stopping in the cars, spitting at me, shouting abusive stuff at me. And it was like, I sit in this office all the time, often with my windows open, and I never even see it. And she knows, and every woman who worked or who was at the university knew not to, that street, especially at night, but during the day, if you're walking by yourself, or if you've got a short skirt on or shorts or something like that, then you will get abused. And it was like, and I was completely...
Yeah, it's a revelation.
And I was like, how do I not see it? And and partly it's because, because I'm not there in the situation, but also because I think people who are abusing women don't want everyone to know. So they do look for lone women or...
Yeah. Well, I remember years ago now, when you said you were walking home from somewhere at night.
I was just thinking of that.
And there was a woman walking in front of him, and he wanted her to know, he didn't wish her any harm, and he was saying, well, what do I do? What should I have done? Sort of walk faster to get past her. And I said, no, because that'll... I said, cross the road. And then, and it's obvious now, and most men would do that, but at the time...
Well, but it's...
it is important that men can make women frightened when they don't know they're making them frightened.
Yeah, or even...
And they don't want to make them frightened.
Yeah, do know, but don't know what to do about it.
And for most men, then if they found out that, then they get angry, because it's like, well, I haven't got to do anything. And it's like... It doesn't matter. It's not about you.
Yes. But if I've been that woman with footsteps quickening behind me. Yeah. So I've just started to go faster. But, if it's a man, he's bigger and taller.
And it's interesting because, when I say that violence against women and girls is perpetrated by men. But but us men growing up, we know that actually... we were subject to violence, not sexual violence, but we were subject to violence growing up, because if you were in the street late at night and you saw some blokes walking towards you or behind you, you'd speed up, or you'd go in a different direction when you were younger, because you didn't know, especially. But violence happens all the time, and for something, we as men, especially when we're younger, and we were in that situation, we had to take some precautions, because we could be part of that. But it's never, that was never we've never had to deal with the sort of attention that young girls get. We've never had to. It's never been we worry about sexual violence, and the way that there's this often the workshop that people do is you get a sheet of paper and you put a line down the middle and you ask all the men in the room, say, write down all the things that you do to protect yourself when you go out of an evening, what you got to think about to stop you being sexually to stop sexual abuse. And obviously no one thinks of anything. Then ask all the women, And the list just goes on and on. Because men don't understand what women go through. They don't understand the experience of a woman. And we, to be fair, we never will. But we can understand the some of the things that that women have to go through to try and protect themselves.
So, as the White Ribbon campaign, apart from talking to your peers and other men about things, I mean, do you do things in schools? Or?
So, yeah, we've got, so some of the key things that we do is we work with groups that tend to be sort of male dominated, such as football teams and through sports. We work with organisations like fire service, police, especially, which are very, tend to be quite misogynistic in lots of ways.
Well,
and
very
sometimes
male-dominated, laddish culture, aren't they?
They are, and it's really quite simple to solve a lot of this, because when they say, well, what do we need to do? I say, well, more women. That's what you need, more women. You look at where where all the sort of really dangerous men in police uniforms are, and they're all in all male sections, like Wayne Couzens was in the firearms, which had no women in it. And you look at the other areas where there's more women officers, and completely different in terms of but. So we work with those sorts of organisations, but really any organisation, especially sort of local councils, become accredited. So we have an accreditation scheme where we encourage organisations to join. They will put in an action plan of how they're going to make sure that they've got policies to support women, if they suspect domestic violence, to get them to train the men and to encourage people within the organisation to have ambassadors, which are male supporters who will go out and be active for the campaign. White Ribbon is about prevention. It's about to try and there's something that we keep putting on our website, which frustrates me, but it says we want to stop violence before it starts, which seems a bonkers way of saying something, because it's like you can't stop something before it starts. But it is about trying to reduce the occurrence of that, but by changing people's attitudes. It's not, most men are not going to be murderers or rapists, but.
Oh, no, I mean, that's something I've thought about a lot, because I'm quite convinced I'm not going to murder or sexually abuse anybody. But there is no reason for a woman, whether she knows me or not, to automatically think that.
Old people say, oh, well, not all men, it's only a tiny minority. And then they say, well, all right, snakes, it's only a tiny minority, are poisonous, but if you throw a load of them at it, how do you know which one's going to kill you and which one's just...
It can be dangerous to think, oh, it's some toxic men, and they're easy to spot because they're the ones that do this, that and the other, because they're not easy to spot. For White Ribbon, one of the things that I think we want to try and do is make sure that men realise it's a men's issue, and that we want to engage men to do something about it, and it's not just I want to say I'm cool, because I'm right on with women.
Yeah. So if people want to help, get involved, find out more, what do they do?
You can go straight onto the White Ribbon website, White Ribbon UK. Just type that into Google and you'll get straight to the website, and it tells you how the sorts of things that we're doing, how people can become involved.
That's great. Well, thanks very much, Pete. That was really... I could carry on. I want to. I will after we turn this off. But yeah, it's been really interesting talking to you. Thanks.
Yes, and well done.